Welcome to today's episode of the New Leaf podcast for people who are turning over a new leaf in financial advice. And today I'm joined by Martin Byrne, a real icon in the business protection space.
I think the biggest misconception about business protection is that it's complicated and it's expensive.
Definitely.
So my remit is to make it simple and affordable.
We'll be talking about how he has really leaned into a niche in this industry.
It's a massively underserviced market. I think it's a little bit like kind of wills and estate planning. It runs about 30-35%. So there's still a massive chunk there to go at.
We also dive into how Martin uses content for social proof.
I don't get a lot of inquiries, through websites. I do get them through LinkedIn though. I think it's really interesting actually. I got a really good client through LinkedIn.
We also talked about how advisors can diversify their income to make sure that they're not just relevant now, but also in the future. What do you find the average earnings per policy is in business protection?
My average case is about 5k.
Wow. Okay, so
Yeah.
This is a big deal. So enjoy the episode. Hi Martin, welcome to the New Leaf podcast. How you doing?
I'm as good as gold, Dan. Thanks for having me, mate.
No, it's great to have you on with me today. I want to get straight into it. Now, your business is very different to most advisors that work with us and probably around the UK. You have really niched down into a very particular area of business, and that is business protection.
Yeah.
And the name of your company is literally Business Protect.
Yeah.
I just want to know first, what was the catalyst and the thought process behind doing that?
It was, I was a mortgage advisor at the time, and Royal London, who used to be Bright Grey, bought out Relevant Life Policy, and I'd done a load of work on a case. I worked all weekend on it. It was quite a big mortgage case, and there was protection involved as well. And then the guy came back on Monday and said, I found someone down the road who'll do it for 50p cheaper, and I just thought, I'm doing all this unpaid work. And I'd started networking at the time as well. And it was really to have something to talk to business owners about. I liked hanging around business owners. I liked dealing with them much more than kind of retail, where I felt like for me, I'd be explaining complicated products to people that they didn't necessarily always understand. And I'd have to kind of say, put some flowers around it and go, it's okay, trust me, this is the right thing for you. Whereas with business owners, they kind of understand risk, they've got budgets and they make decisions. So I just saw it as a great in.
And I think as well, actually, that you think about it, as we talked about being a niche, I still think now, you've been doing this, how long now have you been doing this?
Since 2008.
So for a while, right?
Yeah.
And I think even today, that business protection marketplace hasn't been captured really well by many people at all.
You're right. It's a massively underserviced market. I think it's a little bit like kind of wills and estate planning. It runs about 30-35%. So there's still a massive chunk there to go at. And it's just a really nice space to operate in.
But you must have found there were some challenges to do this, to take that decision to go sort of into one area rather than spreading yourself out, where you could obviously maneuver into different client banks and so on. So what sort of challenge did you face at the start?
The biggest challenge I had, I think when I started doing it, I'd moved from London up north because my wife and I needed the babysitters, and I'm from New Zealand, so my family wasn't around. So she was from Wilmslow, so we moved up north. My biggest challenge was I had no one to talk to. That was the really, and this, if you're in business and you've got no one to talk to, you're probably out of business.
Yeah.
So I started networking, and that was my biggest challenge of actually finding people to talk to, building a whole new network of kind of business contacts.
And I guess that gave you the in because you're talking to business owners. So actually finding something that would be relevant to them straight away, business protection is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. And I learned so much doing that as well. I ended up running one group, then I ran 4 groups, then I ended up running 26 groups in the Northwest. And the opportunity of running those groups and kind of being able to fast track trust with business owners by running good meetings, turning up on time. The amount of times I finished a meeting at 10 o'clock and I would see people look at their watches, and just to timestamp, I do what I say I do.
We've had other people on the podcast so far, and one of the things that I'm seeing coming through from the characteristic of the advisor is you need a bit of true grit about you.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like from what you're telling me there, that to run 25, 26 networking groups and to be part of that, that's a massive time investment.
Yes.
And I'm guessing there wasn't much back from that in terms of wealth and value at the start. So you had to really persevere, right, to do that.
That's right. And at actually time when I started, I was still a mortgage broker, and I got no business for 7 months, I think, because people need a mortgage.
Yeah.
And, when you're a financial advisor or in any kind of department, people are going to share personal, financial, medical information with you. So they really have to trust you that you're going to do a good job, be confidential. And so it did take a long time.
I think that's really interesting. Some of my listeners today being maybe new advisors, especially coming into the industry. How were you able to resource yourself, or what did you do to keep yourself going for that 7-8 months?
Yeah. I mean, what you have to do is accept that you can't win them all, but you've got to be in to win, and have the kind of attitude. So my attitude is, my remit is to give people good intel. What they do with that is their business. Some people will take you on as, and become a client. Some won't. Some will take that information and go somewhere else with it. Don't kind of beat yourself up about people saying no to you, because it's like I've always told my kids this, 20% of people will like you, 20% might actively dislike you, and the other 60% won't give a shit either way, to be honest. So forget about that 80%, focus on the 20% of people that you get on with. And business networking is a little bit like that. You can't get on with everyone, so don't expect it all to be kind of, flowers or a bed of roses. You've just got to go out there and get used to a bit of rejection. It's good for you. It builds your character. No usually means not now. It doesn't mean no necessarily. And it's always about timing. I always say to my clients, it's your agenda, not mine. So you've got to remember it's other people's agendas, not yours.
Getting back up on that horse, isn't it? Again
Exactly.
and again, and not giving up. And I think, when we think about New Leaf, like with the amount of projects we undertake and the things we think will be great ideas, and we do. I mean, 9 out of 10 of those projects will probably end up in failure. But it's that one project that makes a big difference.
Exactly.
And the same for what relates back to what you're saying with your networking groups and the way you founded your business. I really like the name of the company. So Business Protect literally does what it says, doesn't it?
I know a lot of people ask me, do you stand outside chip shops with a baseball bat? No, I don't.
No.
But funnily enough, the name came up. I was just searching Company's House, and the name came up. It was a roller door company in South London that had just liquidated.
Oh, really?
Called Business Protect, and I just saw it and went, bang, I'm having that.
So you don't get people sort of asking about garages and things then, do you?
No.
I guess the really good thing about the name, though, is that how people search for businesses now and how they search for advice. You put Business Protect into Google or whatever, and you must be coming up naturally.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't get a lot of inquiries, through websites. I do get them through LinkedIn, though. I think the Business Protect presence on LinkedIn is probably better than the website.
Yeah, okay.
And I think it's really interesting, actually. I got a really good client through LinkedIn. He just posted up, can anyone help me with business protection? And about 3 people from my network said, Martin's the guy to speak to.
Yeah.
I went and saw the post, and there were about 3 or 4 other advisors there saying, give me a call. I thought, he's not going to call you.
No.
So I connected with him. I said, happy to share some good intel. Here's my diary link. Book in a call. He connected with me on the Friday night, booked in a call for the Monday morning, and became a client. So you've got to be proactive. Don't expect people to come and find you for what you do. You've got to kind of be proactive and go out and find people yourself.
It's great you say that, because on one of our other episodes, we had Sam Oakes from Financial Plan Life as a guest, and he was talking about social proof. And that's exactly what you just described, is that someone is using social media to validate you as a business owner and doing business protection. And those guys just come out of nowhere and say, call me. there's nothing to validate that, because what you've done really well is you've created educational content, and I've seen your stuff obviously on LinkedIn, and it's really easy, it's simple to follow, it's nothing crazy, just your face to talking to camera, explaining different concepts, and I think that makes a massive difference to people then looking at you as an expert in the field.
I think the biggest misconception about business protection is that it's complicated and it's expensive.
Definitely.
So my remit is to make it simple and affordable.
Yeah.
And if you can look at what the barriers are, or what the perceived barriers are for any kind of financial advice, and look to actually flip those on their head. So, when I say simple and affordable, I will say to clients, my 4 golden rules of business protection: something's better than nothing. It's got to be to budget. It's got to be fit for purpose, and has to be regularly reviewed, because a year's a long time in business. And that's simple, right? That's a concept they can get their heads around.
Yeah. And I think the other thing you talk about business protection being not as complicated as people think. And you're probably talking about clients there, I imagine. But actually, I think a lot of advisors think it's more complicated as well, and then they stay away from it, and actually they're missing a massive trick, because the amount of clients people must have in their mortgage books where they've got directors, owners of businesses, self-employed individuals, and they're just not tapping into that marketplace because they feel they haven't got time, or just probably don't understand the stuff. And I know a lot of advisors who say they do business protection, but really they just do relevant life.
Yes. And I think there's a lot of fear there as well. Fear of actually going down a pathway with a client and then them asking you a question you don't know the answer to. And that's all of a sudden, you're going to be found out. I don't really know business protection. And it's like anything, the first time you do it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
But once you've done 10 cases and 20 cases, it's going to be like doing whatever else you do on a daily basis. I really like, at the moment I'm running the business protection help desk for New Leaf. I love helping people start doing business protection, because what they find out is it's not as complicated as they thought it was.
And for the people watching as well, just stay aware that you do now work for us in this consultancy capacity, because we want to leverage your knowledge on business protection to help other advisors. And I think that's a real benefit, that actually we got somebody who's doing the role, and you're in that almost compliance role, but really more training development. And that's really cool for our advisors in our network to really get a lot of insight from you on that.
Yeah, I'm not kind of being a big head or anything about it, but I don't think there's any other network in the UK that has got such dedicated business protection support, training, and advice, and all credit to you guys for allowing me to do that, because that's what I really wanted to do.
No, that's great. And thanks for being the person to really force that issue as well for us, because, without you, then we wouldn't have that support wouldn't have been there. So it's been really good to use your experience. We're just going into the other products then, because I think a lot of people, like we said, think about individual life cover, like the relevant lifestyle stuff, quite easy to put in place, quick wins for directors, and that's where they leave it. But there's so many other product lines that are really important, and possibly for your client listeners here as well that might be interested. What sort of products are we talking about here?
I'll just briefly touch on relevant life. There's so many nuances to relevant life. Continuation options, whether you lose terminal illness benefit if you leave the company, whether you're going to have the employer as a trustee or not. Because if you're just a 2-person business and you're married, you have a relevant life policy and you've got the employer as a trustee, and something happens to both of you at the same time, there's no one there to administer the trust. So there's loads of nuances to relevant life that are really important. But in terms of other products, the stuff I do the most really is share protection, key person, executive income replacement, and then I do group life, group critical illness, and group income protection.
Yeah, of course, it's not just individual, is it? The group side of things is quite a big
massive
one as well.
Massive benefits of group underwriting. You can have a 2-person scheme with Canada Life where you can get £550,000 life cover, £100,000 critical illness, and the underwriting questions are: has anyone had a serious illness in the last 12 months, and that means heart attack, cancer, stroke, diagnosis of a terminal illness. I know I'm getting technical,
that's
fine. Has anyone been off work for more than 3 months, and does anyone travel to any dodgy countries? That's the underwriting.
Yeah.
So a lot of my clients, business owners tend to be a little bit older. They maybe someone said no to them, or 5 years ago when they tried to get insurance because maybe they've got health issues or they're overweight or and a lot of people have that kind of idea that once someone said no to them, well, that's it for me, I can't get insured. And it's like, well, actually put a group scheme through your limited company and you get the benefit of non-underwritten levels of cover. And it's a massive win. I love helping people like that when they think they can't get covered.
Your enthusiasm really comes across as well, and you clearly know your stuff, which is great. I mean, when you're actually talking to clients and you're discussing this with them, what are you doing to manage that client understanding? Because it can be, I know we say it's not complicated, but obviously for a retail client, not being trained on this before, not knowing anything about these products, it can be very hard to understand. So how do you approach that when you actually manage the client interaction?
I keep it conceptual, right? So I'll go through those 4 golden rules of business protection. Something's better than nothing. It's got to be to budget. It has to be fit for purpose, and it has to be regularly reviewed because a year is a long time in business. So if you agree that something's better than nothing, and if they say no to that, fine, then that's the end of the meeting. If they agree it has to be to budget, then quite often I'll say, well, have you got a budget in mind? Because it's great to give ideal world advice. In an ideal world, you'd have everything, but realistically, that's unaffordable. So I will talk to them about the golden rules. I will then talk to them about the concept of risk. And I'll say there's 3 types of risk. Fatal, which is pretty self-explanatory. Critical, which is heart attack, cancer, stroke. And innocuous, so anything that isn't fatal or isn't critical, but it's going to stop you fulfilling your role in the company or making a profit or doing your job. And then I will say, let's talk about risk in your business and let's prioritize your needs. And let's take care of what we can now within your budget, and then let's annually review. So I think once you take them down that concept of what risk is, how they can mitigate it, the fact that you're going to stick to their budget, you're not going to try and impose a budget on them they're uncomfortable with, and the fact that you're coming back every year to look after them to make sure it still fits all the criteria, people are much more comfortable about progressing with you.
And when you're approaching clients, new customers to work with you, for those listeners who maybe are trying to get into this marketplace, is there any advice on sort of approaching which gatekeepers there are in a business? How do you do that? How do you get into the company?
I would say network. I would say network. Go to where the business owners hang out. Because then you're bypassing all the gatekeepers. You can cold call and you can do marketing campaigns and leaflets and LinkedIn and all of that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, you want to have a conversation with the person who's going to make the decision.
It's really old school methods still win the day. And you know what? There's a point there to make though, in that I think we've seen lots of technological advances in our industry across the whole sphere, but probably lacking in business protection. It hasn't had the same investment from providers and from stakeholders. So you still need to be somebody that's out there talking to people, finding out where they hang out, like you say. But the point I'm making though is, if you look at where technology is taking us in other areas, it's making it more and more likely that a client can just do it themselves. This is a really good way to diversify your income if you want to be safe for the future. Because this is a sort of area where businesses don't do it themselves. They'll need someone to talk to them about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I just had a client call me up last night. He's working for a Canadian sound company, and they're offering him benefits, but they're in Canada and he's based in the UK. And he'd spent about an hour looking on the internet and then went, oh, why didn't I just call Martin? I think, here's the thing as well, consumer duty, right? I think, if you're an IFA, some people are superstars, right? And they are good at everything. I'm not one of those people. But my paradigm is you can't be good at pensions, investments, ISAs, savings, mortgages, protection, business protection, because you can't keep your finger on the pulse of the whole lot. So I think you've either got to do it or you've got to signpost it. And my kind of paradigm is I'm happy to help people do it. I'm happy to give information away freely, because some people will take that information and run. Some people will just look at it and go, yeah, that's too complicated. Can you do it for me? So I think just having that outlook of going networking, giving away good information. So, my pitch at networking meetings for the last 15 years would be something like this. Hi, I'm Martin Byrne from Business Protect. I get the tax man to help pay for the personal life insurance of limited company owners and directors. So if you're a limited company owner and director and you're not using your company to pay for your personal life insurance, have a chat with me. I'll tell you how to do it, whether you use me or not. And then I'll say something like, because insurance is so exciting, I make electronic dance music because it keeps me grounded. So if you don't want to talk about insurance, let's talk about that instead. So, you can't be sick over people with your opportunity of what you know. No. And a lot of people are scared to talk to people about insurance because they think they're going to get sold to. So spend the time just building a bit of rapport and talking about other stuff with them as well. And then let them ask you about it. That's the approach.
Guys, you've got to rewind that bit now and write that down, that opening. Okay. So you want to make sure you're listening to what Marty just said there. Look, I want to get into the fact as well, just looking at the income side. Now, this is another really big important point. The average earning or commission on a retail customer is probably, from what we see, is probably around £800 per policy.
Yeah.
What do you find the average earnings per policy is in business protection?
My average case is about 5K.
Wow. Okay. So this is a big deal. So we're looking at regular retail client, £800. And I'm not saying we don't want to forget about the retail clients, obviously.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the income change for one case.
It's massive. And here's the thing, it's the same amount of paperwork, research, compliance, for a £20 a month policy as it is for a £200 a month policy. And the kind of more you get into business protection and the more you know and the better connections you make, I've got clients that pay £2,000 a month for their policies, because they might have medical issues. And I always position the small number against the big number as well. So if a client's paying, £1,000 a month for a policy, but they're covering off £2 million worth of risk, then I will say to them, for £1,000 a month, you're taking £2 million worth of risk off your balance sheet and putting it on an insurer's balance sheet. Good value.
Yeah.
And
and the income you're earning from those deals, you're actually doing it a bit differently to what most people do. You're taking it on the drip.
Yes.
So your clawback risk is basically zero.
Yes.
And because these cases are all rather large, your monthly ongoing earnings is actually pretty good.
That's it. And you can build a predictable 2 to 4 year revenue stream that you can see that's coming in.
Very tactical, very good idea.
And here's the other thing about taking it non-indemnity. Typically, it will pay out 20% more.
That's a good point.
Than indemnity.
Yeah,
so if you've got
really
people introducing business to you and you're paying them 20% away.
Yeah. So that average case of £5,000 is actually really £6,000.
Yeah.
Over the indemnity period.
Yeah.
No, obviously looking back at new people getting into the industry, you were a new advisor once.
Yes.
And I'm happy to say you joined New Leaf when you were a new advisor. It was lovely to have you with us then. But you left us.
Yes, I did. I did.
What happened there? You're back. Look, you're back now. But what would you say to a new advisor? And what was your thought process through that period of your time as a business owner?
Well, I think you would agree that back in 2013, I think it was, New Leaf was probably a different organisation than it is now. It's bigger, better. I suppose there were just, I was frustrated with some admin things, being perfectly honest. I don't mind being honest about it. And I thought the grass was greener on the other side. Yeah. So I went. You wouldn't know
any different though, would you, I suppose?
No. And I went to a very, very small network. That went horribly wrong when they ran out of money and just decided not to pay me.
Always a risk for people not doing a DD.
Yeah. And then I've been part of very, very big networks as well, where they didn't understand the business I was doing. Every time I called up, I'd speak to someone different, So what I would say to someone joining the industry is find a network that ethically aligns with your morals and how you want to do business. It's do the right thing and let the money take care of itself is probably the biggest thing, because you can't. I'm so happy to come back to New Leaf as well, because
you're back and it's just amazing.
And what other network says choose to be happy? That aligns with my, that aligns with my core being and that I believe in positivity. I got that little Think Positive book from Mark last week. You know,
Yes, yeah.
what other network sends you out things like that about staying positive? And this network does so much for you. So the short answer is for people join New Leaf. But what
Thanks for the ad, by the way.
what I would say is you know, have a look at who owns that network and what their objectives are, because you know, you need to be aligned with who you're working with in any kind of business, you know, and I would say don't go for something too small, don't go for something too big, you know. New Leaf is that nice sweet spot in the middle, and not only in size, but the way it conducts itself and the kind of ethics behind the business it's super ethical.
Well, final question from me.
Yeah.
Is the tagline of our podcast is turning over a new leaf in financial advice.
Yes.
Right? So we're asking every guest who's come on this season, what's the one new leaf you're turning over in your business at the moment?
AI.
Oh, okay.
AI.
Nice.
So I saw a very, very interesting webinar, and it was I think I probably saw it through New Leaf, will robo advice and AI take over from advice? And the short answer was no. But advisors that use AI will outperform advisors that don't use AI.
Sure.
So I've started using it in my admin. I've got a really good mate whose son's got an AI company, and he's given me a lot of his time generously and kind of taught this old dog some new tricks, because, you know, I'm 61. I don't like learning new stuff. So I've started using it for admins, and man, it's incredible. So, for example, taking everything on the drip, I get a spreadsheet every month of a lot of payments, and I've got introducers. Now, previously, I would have sat down there and gone, right, that's 50p to him, and it would have taken me a day to do it. Yeah. Now I put it into AI and go, there's the introducers, there's the splits, there's the spreadsheet, bang, 3 minutes, and it's done. And I've got other ideas about using AI to market into businesses overtly as well. What I don't like about AI is when it pretends to be people. Like when you phone up and it's an AI thing, and you ask them a question, they go,
authenticity.
They go, oh, hang on. It's like, come on, you're a robot, you know. Hang on, what? You know.
Well, Martin, it's been great to have you on the podcast today. Where can people find more information about your company?
Businessprotect.biz is the website, and Business Protect on LinkedIn as well.
Excellent. Well, make sure, guys, you check it out. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, mate. Appreciate it.